Daniel had always enjoyed the quiet comfort of his apartment. It wasn't large or luxurious, but it was his own space, and that made it perfect for him. The small living room had a couch that had seen better days, a few shelves lined with books, and a coffee table that carried the marks of many late-night snacks. The kitchen was tiny but functional, and the bedroom, though modest, felt like a sanctuary. Daniel liked his apartment because it gave him a sense of control over his environment, a place where he could escape from the hectic pace of the city outside. This evening had been especially long for Daniel. Work had piled up in an unusual way, with calls, emails, and tasks that seemed to demand more attention than he could give. He had spent hours in front of his computer, barely noticing the time passing, only occasionally looking out the window to see the streetlights glowing faintly against the dark sky. By the time he finally closed his laptop, his eyes were heavy, and his body ached from sitting in the same position for hours. Daniel had a nightly ritual that helped him relax after such days. He liked to change into comfortable clothes, make a cup of herbal tea, and listen to soft music as he prepared for sleep. Tonight he had skipped the tea and music, feeling too exhausted to bother with anything beyond the basics. He wanted nothing more than to crawl into bed and forget the world for a few hours. As he stripped down to sleep naked, he felt a familiar sense of freedom, a lightness that only came when he let go of all restrictions and wrapped himself in the quiet of his own space. The apartment was silent, except for the faint hum of the refrigerator and the occasional distant sound of a car passing on the street below. The dim light of a bedside lamp cast soft shadows across the room, creating a calm, almost cozy atmosphere. Daniel slid under the sheets and closed his eyes, feeling the softness of the blanket against his skin and the coolness of the sheets underneath. He let out a deep sigh, a mixture of relief and exhaustion, and tried to focus on the rhythm of his own breathing. At first, sleep came slowly. His mind kept replaying events from the day, small mistakes at work, messages he hadn't replied to, things he had forgotten to do. He tried to push these thoughts away, reminding himself that none of it mattered while he was in his apartment, safe and alone. Gradually, the familiar comfort of the bed and the peacefulness of the room began to calm him. His thoughts slowed, his breathing became steady, and soon he drifted into a deep sleep. The hours passed quietly. Outside, the city carried on in its usual rhythm, distant voices and faint car engines punctuating the night. Inside, Daniel's apartment remained still. He was oblivious to everything around him, sinking deeper into a state where reality and dreams blurred together. He slept soundly, unaware of the ordinary world just beyond his walls, unaware that this night would be unlike any other he had experienced before. In his sleep, Daniel's body moved slightly, turning from one side to the other as he adjusted to find the most comfortable position. His mind wandered through dreams, strange and vivid, reflecting fragments of his day and subconscious fears. Sometimes he dreamed of mundane things, a meeting at work, a conversation with a friend. But occasionally his dreams took him to unusual places, strange landscapes and situations that made no sense at all. He barely noticed, though, for the comfort of his bed kept him grounded in the real world, even as his mind roamed elsewhere. As the night deepened, a sense of stillness filled the apartment. The quiet was almost tangible, a soft, invisible presence that seemed to settle around him. Daniel slept without worry, completely unaware of the shadows that shifted silently at the edges of the room. It was a peaceful night, the kind that makes one feel safe and warm, yet it carried a subtle tension that Daniel could not have imagined. Sometimes, in the quietest moments, the smallest changes go unnoticed until they become impossible to ignore. Daniel's breathing was deep and even, his body relaxed and unguarded. He had no sense of urgency, no awareness of anything outside the cocoon of his bedroom. The comfort of being alone, the freedom of sleeping naked, and the exhaustion from his long day combined to create a perfect, almost dreamlike stillness. Everything seemed normal, and yet, as often happens in life, normal can change in an instant. Somewhere in the apartment, just beyond Daniel's awareness, the air shifted slightly. A faint sound, almost imperceptible, brushed against the silence. Daniel stirred slightly but did not wake, adjusting his position as though responding to a vague disturbance in his dreams. The lamp continued to cast soft light across the room, and the shadows on the walls remained calm, unbroken. To Daniel, nothing seemed unusual. To the room itself, however, something unusual had begun to stir. Time passed, and Daniel remained. In his deep sleep, a figure of stillness in the center of the bed, he was completely immersed in the quiet comfort of the night, enjoying the rare moment when everything around him paused, allowing him to rest without interruption. The simplicity of the evening, the peace of being alone, and the familiarity of his own home wrapped around him like a soft blanket, giving him a sense of security that he cherished deeply. And yet, as he slept, the subtle stirrings of the night continued, unseen and unheard. Shadows shifted slightly, and a small, almost imperceptible movement traced across the floor. Daniel remained unaware, lost in dreams, his mind and body at ease. The ordinary had begun to bend, the calm of the night carrying with it the quiet, beginnings of something extraordinary, something that would soon change the entire course of his evening in ways he could never have imagined. Daniel slept deeply, wrapped in the comfort of his sheets and the quiet of his apartment. The night was still, the kind of stillness that makes one feel as if the world has paused for a while. But just as the calm seemed complete, a strange sensation began to stir. It started subtly, like the gentle brush of air across his skin. At first, Daniel didn't notice. He shifted slightly in his sleep, adjusting to a position that felt more comfortable, and the sensation faded into the background of his dreams. Minutes later, the feeling returned, stronger this time. It was not just air, it was something more, tangible, something brushing lightly against him. Daniel stirred again, his eyes still closed, and murmured softly in his sleep. The sensation seemed to move around him, shifting from one side of the bed to the other. His subconscious mind tried to make sense of it, blending it into his dreams. Perhaps it was a shadow in his room, a strange shape he had seen in the dim light. Perhaps it was only his imagination. But the sensation persisted. Daniel's body tensed slightly, a response he didn't fully understand. It felt like a weight pressing gently against the sheets, like something large and soft had settled nearby. His sleep was deep, but not unbreakable, and the unusual feeling began to stir his awareness. He twisted his body, attempting to ignore it, but the sensation was persistent. It was almost as if someone, or something, was moving around him quietly, carefully, trying not to wake him. Daniel's mind flickered between sleep and half-consciousness. He dreamed of strange, unfamiliar landscapes, of wandering alone in open fields, yet he felt a presence beside him in both dreams and reality. The line between what was imagined and what was real began to blur. A soft noise, barely audible, reached his ears. It was a faint rustling, like the movement of cloth or fur, and it made him shift more noticeably. Still, he didn't fully wake, choosing instead to roll over and settle back into the sheets. Then came the unmistakable feeling of something brushing lightly against his leg. Daniel's eyes opened slowly, at first adjusting to the dim light of the bedside lamp. The room looked exactly as it had before, every shadow in its place, every object seemingly where it belonged, and yet the sensation persisted. His heart began to beat faster, a subtle pulse of anxiety rising in his chest. For the first time, he considered that something unusual might actually be happening. He sat up carefully, trying not to make a sound. The sheets shifted around him, and he realized that the sensation was not coming from a dream. It was real. Something in his apartment was moving. His first thought was that someone had broken in. Fear coursed through him. He had always been cautious, but he had never imagined a stranger sneaking into his home in the middle of the night. He reached slowly for the lamp, intending to turn it on and see what was happening, but paused. The room was quiet, and he did not want to alert whoever or whatever was there. Daniel's mind raced. Could it be a burglar? Was it an animal that had somehow gotten inside? He thought back to his door and windows, all of which were locked. Nothing seemed out of place, Yet the sensation of movement was undeniable. His curiosity mingled with fear. He decided to move carefully, to investigate without panicking, keeping his movement slow and deliberate so as not to disturb whatever presence was in the room. He swung his legs out of bed and stood, bare feet touching the cool floor. Each step felt tense, as if the floor itself could betray him. He scanned the room, his eyes adjusting to the dim light. The shadows seemed ordinary, yet he felt them watching, moving almost imperceptibly. He inched toward the edge of the bed, trying to make sense of what he had sensed moments ago. The rustling sound came again, faint but definite, and Daniel froze, listening. The noise seemed to come from multiple directions at once. His heart pounded faster. Daniel felt a mixture of fear and fascination, unable to stop himself from investigating further. He moved toward the source of the movement, each step measured, every sense alert. The room that had felt familiar and safe just moments ago now seemed foreign, alive with unknown energy. He imagined every possibility, some harmless, some frightening, and each thought made him more alert, more aware of every small sound and shadow. Daniel's breathing became steady as he reminded himself to stay calm. He knew panicking would only make the situation worse. Slowly, he crouched near the edge of his bed, straining to see through the shadows. There was a soft shift in the room, a gentle brush against the floor, and he realized that whatever it was moving quietly, carefully, almost cautiously. It was not clumsy or careless. It seemed aware, almost intelligent in its movements. For a long moment, Daniel simply watched, unsure of what to do next. The presence moved again, closer this time, a soft, warm sensation brushing against his arm. He flinched slightly, startled, but did not retreat. His fear was tempered by a growing sense of curiosity. He wanted to see it, to understand what had entered his apartment and why. Slowly, he reached out, his hand trembling slightly, and tried to make contact with whatever was there. The room remained quiet except for the faint sounds of movement. Daniel's heart raced, but a strange calm settled over him as well. He realized that the presence was not threatening, not aggressive. It seemed almost curious. He whispered softly, hoping for a response, but the only reply was the gentle rustle of movement. His mind filled with questions. How had it entered? What was it? Why had it come into his apartment? Daniel knew he had to be careful. Any sudden action might frighten it, and he did not know what it was capable of. He moved slowly, keeping his hands visible and his movements deliberate. The sensation of warmth brushed against him again, and he felt a mixture of astonishment and relief. It was alive, that much was clear, but it did not seem dangerous. He crouched quietly, observing, trying to understand, his imagination running wild with possibilities. Time seemed to stretch as Daniel remained still, watching and listening. The world outside his apartment faded away, leaving only him, the shadows, and the mysterious presence. Every small sound made him flinch slightly. Every movement caught his attention. The night, which had begun so quietly and peacefully, now held a strange tension, a mix of fear and fascination that made his senses sharper than ever. He took a deep breath, reminding himself to stay calm, and prepared to confront whatever had entered his life so suddenly. Daniel knew that this night would not end quietly, and that whatever awaited him was something extraordinary, something that would leave a mark on his memory forever. He had no idea how unusual, astonishing, and life-changing this night would become, but he felt the first stirrings of anticipation, mixed with fear, knowing that the ordinary calm of his apartment had been broken in a way he could never have predicted. Daniel's heart raced as he stayed crouched near the edge of his bed, every muscle tense and ready to react. The strange sensation in his room had grown stronger, more certain, and he could no longer ignore it. The gentle rustling and the faint warmth brushing against his skin told him that whatever was there was alive. He reminded himself to stay calm. Panic would not help him understand what was happening, and it was clear that this was no ordinary situation. Slowly, Daniel reached for the bedside lamp. He hesitated, wondering if the sudden light might frighten whatever it was. but curiosity, stronger than fear, pushed him forward. With a careful hand, he switched on the lamp, and the room was suddenly bathed in a soft glow. Shadows retreated, revealing the familiar outlines of his furniture, the stacks of books, and the small rug by the bed. And then he saw it. At first, Daniel thought he was imagining things. It took a few moments for his mind to process the scene in front of him. There, in the corner of his room, was a creature unlike anything he had expected. It was not a person, nor a common animal like a cat or dog. Its body was large and covered with soft fur, but its eyes were bright and intelligent, reflecting the light of the lamp in a way that made Daniel freeze in place. The creature's ears twitched slightly, and it tilted its head as if studying him just as he was studying it. Daniel could hardly believe his eyes. How had it gotten in? How could an animal like this appear in his apartment in the middle of the night? The presence was calm, almost curious, not aggressive or threatening. Daniel's fear slowly gave way to astonishment. He realized that he was not in immediate danger. The creature seemed to sense that as well, remaining still but alert, waiting to see what Daniel would do next. He moved cautiously, taking small steps toward it. The creature did not retreat. Instead, it watched him with an almost human-like awareness. Daniel's mind raced with questions. Was it lost? Had it escaped from somewhere nearby? Was it hurt? He wanted to help, but he had no idea how. Every instinct told him to proceed slowly, to show that he meant no harm. He spoke softly, almost whispering, "It's okay. I won't hurt you." The sound of his own voice felt strange in the quiet room, but the creature did not flinch. Daniel edged closer, keeping his hands visible. The creature made a small movement, stepping lightly toward the center of the room. It sniffed the air, its bright eyes following Daniel's every move. The warmth he had felt earlier was now unmistakable. It was the creature's body moving around him. Daniel felt a strange connection forming, a sense of trust that grew with each careful step. He realized that this was not just an intruder in his apartment. It was something alive, aware, and perhaps even intelligent. He paused a few feet away, crouching slightly to make himself appear smaller, less threatening. The creature tilted its head again as if studying his expression. Daniel noticed the subtle details, the softness of its fur, the alertness in its eyes, the gentle way it moved. It was unlike anything he had ever encountered. He could feel his amazement growing, mixed with a sense of responsibility. He could not simply ignore it. He had to find a way to ensure it was safe. Daniel's curiosity overcame his fear. He extended a hand slowly, palm open toward the creature. For a tense moment, nothing happened. Then, cautiously, the creature stepped closer and sniffed his hand. Its movement was careful, deliberate, and Daniel could feel the warmth radiating from its body. Relief washed over him, accompanied by a growing sense of wonder. This was real. He was not dreaming. Something extraordinary had entered his life, right here in his apartment. He sat down slowly on the edge of the bed, keeping his hand out for the creature to approach if it wished. It did, stepping lightly and brushing against his leg again, this time with more confidence. Daniel laughed softly, a sound of amazement mixed with disbelief. How could this happen? He looked around, searching for clues. Windows and doors were locked just as he had left them. There was no obvious point of entry. Yet here it was, a large exotic creature, calm and aware, standing in his bedroom. As he studied the creature, Daniel noticed details that made him even more fascinated. Its eyes seemed intelligent, aware of him as more than just a human. Its movements were graceful and deliberate, almost like it understood the space it was in. The way it breathed, the way it shifted its weight, all suggested that it was aware of his presence and carefully assessing him, just as he was assessing it. Daniel's fear melted completely, replaced by awe. Daniel slowly got up, careful not to make sudden movements. He wanted to see the creature more closely to understand what it was. It did not retreat. Instead, it followed him lightly, almost playfully, keeping a safe distance but never leaving his side. He walked around the room, observing it from different angles, amazed at how calm and curious it was. Each step revealed more of its unique features: the shape of its ears, the softness of its fur, the way its tail moved gently behind it. He whispered again, "Where did you come from?" The creature responded with a soft, almost inaudible sound, like a gentle chirp or hum. Daniel's astonishment grew. He realized that he was experiencing something incredibly rare, something extraordinary that few people ever witnessed in their lifetime. He tried to remain calm, knowing that any sudden movement could frighten the creature. Yet at the same time, he felt an overwhelming desire to understand it, to make sense of how and why it had come into his apartment. Time seemed to slow as Daniel and the creature studied each other. The night outside continued quietly, but inside, his apartment, something remarkable was unfolding. What had begun as a strange sensation now became a shared moment of recognition between two beings, each aware of the other's presence. Daniel felt a mixture of relief, fascination, and growing curiosity. He realized that this was not just an ordinary night. It was a night that would change his perspective, a night that would leave a lasting impression on him forever. Finally, Daniel spoke again, his voice calm but filled with wonder. "I don't know how you got here, but you're safe. I'll figure this out." The creature blinked slowly, a gesture that felt almost like understanding. Daniel smiled, feeling a bond forming, however brief it might be. He knew that the situation was unusual, unexpected, and even astonishing, but he also knew that he had to act carefully to ensure the creature remained safe. As he looked around his apartment, Daniel realized that this was just the beginning. The night had already surprised him in ways he could never have imagined, and what came next might be even more extraordinary. For now, he focused on observing, learning, and understanding, knowing that the calm of the evening had been replaced by a sense of awe, discovery, and wonder that would stay with him for a long time. Daniel's heart pounded as he heard the soft knock on his door, signaling the arrival of the animal rescue team. After hours of careful observation, gentle movements, and whispered words of reassurance, he felt a mixture of relief and lingering awe. The creature in his apartment, which had entered so mysteriously, remained calm, sitting quietly on the blanket he had prepared for it. Its eyes followed Daniel as if acknowledging the efforts he had made to keep it safe. He opened the door, slowly greeting the rescue team, who stepped inside with practiced confidence. Their eyes widened slightly as they saw the creature, and Daniel realized that it was indeed something extraordinary. The team moved with calm efficiency, speaking softly to each other as they assessed the situation. Daniel explained everything: how the creature had appeared, how he had kept it calm, and the subtle ways it had interacted with him. The rescuers listened intently, nodding in understanding, clearly impressed by how Daniel had handled the unusual scenario. One of the team members, a kind-faced woman with a reassuring voice, approached the creature slowly. She carried a soft net and a small crate designed for safely transporting animals. Daniel felt a pang of concern, worried that the creature might panic when she got too close. But as she spoke gently, introducing herself, the creature's posture relaxed slightly. It seemed to sense her calm energy and responded by remaining still, blinking slowly and observing her carefully. Daniel let out a small sigh of relief, realizing that the creature was in good hands. The team worked together carefully, guiding the creature toward the crate without startling it. Daniel stayed nearby, offering quiet encouragement. "It's okay, you're safe," he whispered, as if his words could reach the creature in a way the rescuers could not. Slowly, the team succeeded, and the creature stepped into the crate with cautious compliance. Daniel felt a mix of pride, sadness, and wonder. Pride for having kept it safe, sadness at knowing this extraordinary visitor would soon leave, and wonder at the improbable chain of events that had brought them together. Once the creature was safely secured, the rescue team prepared to leave. They thanked Daniel for his patience and careful handling, praising him for maintaining calm in a situation that could have easily turned chaotic. Daniel realized that his ordinary night, which had begun with nothing more than sleep in his small apartment, had become an experience he would never forget. The team carried the crate to their vehicle, and Daniel followed for a moment, watching the creature's curious eyes meet his one last time. It was a silent farewell, yet Daniel felt a connection that went beyond words. As the vehicle drove away, Daniel closed the door of his apartment and leaned against it, taking a deep breath. The adrenaline that had kept him alert for hours began to fade, replaced by a mixture of exhaustion and reflection. He walked back into his bedroom, looking around at the familiar furniture, the soft sheets on his bed, and the quiet shadows that now seemed ordinary again. And yet, Daniel knew that nothing about this night would ever be ordinary in his memory. He thought back to the first moments, the strange sensation that had awakened him, the gentle brushing against his skin, the intelligence in the creature's eyes. Every detail replayed vividly in his mind, the warmth, the curiosity, the calm trust that had formed between them. Daniel realized how extraordinary the experience had been, not just for its novelty, but for the lessons it had offered about patience, empathy, and understanding. A simple night of sleep had transformed into an encounter that would remain with him forever. Sitting on the edge of his bed, Daniel allowed himself to reflect. Life, he realized, could change in an instant. Something as ordinary as going to sleep could lead to an event that defied expectation, that challenged his perception of the world and left him stunned in the best possible way. The creature had reminded him of the unpredictability of life, the beauty in unexpected moments, and the importance of remaining calm and compassionate even in uncertain circumstances. He smiled to himself, thinking about the quiet humor in the situation. Just hours ago he had been completely alone, sleeping naked and expecting nothing more than rest. Now, he had shared his apartment with a being so remarkable that it felt almost like a dream. The memory of its curious eyes and gentle movements brought a warmth to his chest, a feeling of awe and gratitude. He realized that extraordinary experiences could arrive without warning, and that the simplest moments, like sleep, stillness, and quiet observation, could prepare one for the unexpected. Daniel thought about the rescuers and the care they would provide. He felt satisfied knowing that the creature would soon be safe, perhaps return to a proper home or a sanctuary where it could live comfortably. The knowledge gave him peace, even as he remembered the mixture of fear and astonishment that had filled his apartment earlier. He understood that the night had been a balance between chaos and calm, between the unknown and the remarkable, and he had managed to navigate it with care and patience. As he settled back into bed, Daniel felt the familiar comfort of the sheets against his skin, a feeling that now seemed richer, layered with the memory of the extraordinary events that had unfolded. He closed his eyes, taking deep, steady breaths, allowing the quiet to settle around him once more. The city outside remained alive with distant noises, but inside, Daniel's apartment was calm and still again, a safe haven after a night of wonder and amazement. Even as he drifted back toward sleep, he knew that this night would remain vivid in his mind forever. The memory of the creature, the unexpected visitor that had entered his life so quietly, would stay with him as a reminder of how unpredictable and astonishing life could be. He smiled softly, thinking of the bond he had formed, brief but meaningful, and of the lessons he had learned about patience, observation, and trust. Finally, Daniel allowed himself to relax completely. The fear and tension had faded, leaving only amazement and gratitude. He had faced the unknown with care and calm, had formed a connection with a creature that defied expectation, and had ensured its safety in a world that was otherwise ordinary. The night had left him stunned, not by danger but by wonder, by the extraordinary experience that had entered his apartment without warning. As he drifted into sleep, Daniel knew one thing for certain. Life could surprise him at any moment, and sometimes the most astonishing experiences could arrive quietly, unexpectedly, and without any preparation. He smiled, feeling a sense of peace and fulfillment, and finally let the quiet of the night carry him into dreams once more, with the memory of the extraordinary encounter lingering gently in his mind. Daniel had never faced a situation like this before. The creature in his room was calm, curious, and entirely unexpected, but it was also large and unfamiliar. He knew he needed to act carefully. One wrong move could scare it, and in his small apartment, that could lead to chaos. He took a deep breath, trying to steady himself, and began thinking of the best way to handle the situation. The first challenge was space. Daniel's apartment was small, with furniture arranged in a way that left narrow paths for movement. The creature moved gracefully around the bed and table, its eyes alert and attentive to his every action. Daniel realized he had to create a safe spot, a corner where the creature could stay without knocking over lamps or bookshelves. He moved slowly, positioning a small blanket on the floor in a quiet corner. He hoped it would seem inviting, like a little nest where the creature could rest. As he worked, the creature followed him carefully, sniffing the air, moving lightly on its feet, and occasionally brushing against his legs. Each movement made Daniel's heart race with a mixture of excitement and tension. He had never interacted with an animal like this, and every instinct told him to be gentle, patient, and cautious. He whispered softly, "This is okay. You're safe here." The creature seemed to respond in kind, tilting its head and blinking, slowly, as if understanding his intentions. Next, Daniel considered contacting someone who could help. He didn't want to leave the creature alone, but he also realized that he couldn't care for it properly himself. It might be lost, or escaped, from somewhere nearby. He thought about animal shelters and rescue centers, but he worried they might be unprepared for such an unusual situation. He needed a solution that would ensure the creature remained safe while he figured out the next steps. Carefully, Daniel approached the creature, trying to guide it toward the corner he had prepared. At first, it hesitated, stepping lightly, uncertain of the new space. Daniel stayed calm, crouching slightly to appear less intimidating. He moved slowly, extending his hand as if to invite it forward. The creature sniffed at the blanket, then at his hand, before finally stepping closer. Its movements were deliberate, cautious, and yet there was a sense of trust forming between them. Once the creature settled in the corner, Daniel felt a mixture of relief and awe. It sat quietly on the blanket, observing him with intelligent eyes, as if it was assessing the situation from its own perspective. Daniel realized that this night had transformed from a moment of fear into a unique opportunity. He was experiencing something rare, an encounter with a being so unusual that it could leave a lasting impression on anyone fortunate enough to witness it. Despite the calm, Daniel knew the situation could change at any moment. The creature might become startled or attempt to escape, which could be dangerous in the confined space of his apartment. He moved slowly, scanning the room for potential hazards. Lamps were repositioned, fragile items moved out of the way, and the floor was cleared to give the creature space to move. Every action was deliberate, measured, and careful, as Daniel balanced curiosity with caution. Time passed, and Daniel remained vigilant. He spoke softly, trying to reassure the creature while keeping his own nerves in check. "It's okay. You're safe. I'm not going to hurt you." The creature blinked slowly, its eyes reflecting a quiet intelligence, and shifted slightly on the blanket. Daniel felt a strange connection forming, a silent understanding that he had never experienced before. It was as if the creature recognized his intentions and appreciated the careful way he handled the situation. As he watched, Daniel began to notice small, fascinating details about the creature. Its fur shimmered in the soft light, and its movements were graceful and precise. Its eyes followed him attentively, reflecting curiosity and awareness. Daniel realized that this was not just an ordinary animal. It was intelligent, alert, and sensitive to its surroundings. He felt a mixture of admiration and responsibility. He knew he had to keep it safe, but he also wanted to understand it, to learn more about how it had come into his life. Despite the quiet, tension lingered. Daniel knew that the situation could escalate if the creature became frightened. He continued speaking softly, guiding it gently toward the blanket and offering reassurance. Slowly, he moved closer, sitting on the floor a few feet away, keeping his hands visible and movements deliberate. The creature remained still, observing him carefully, and Daniel felt a wave of relief wash over him. For the first time since discovering it, he allowed himself to breathe more easily. After a few moments, Daniel considered his next step. He needed to contact someone who could help, someone with experience handling unusual animals. He reached for his phone, moving cautiously so as not to startle the creature. It watched him, its head tilting slightly as if curious about the device. Daniel typed a quick message to a local animal rescue center, describing the situation and asking for immediate assistance. He sent the message and waited, feeling the minutes stretch in the quiet apartment. The creature remained calm, though its eyes flickered toward the door and window from time to time. Daniel realized it was aware of its surroundings, sensing even the smallest movements. He felt a mixture of pride and responsibility. He had managed to contain the situation without alarming the creature, a task that required patience, careful observation, and calm energy. He whispered again, "You're doing great. Just stay here a little longer." Moments later, there was a soft vibration in his phone. The rescue center had responded, assuring Daniel that someone would arrive soon. Daniel felt a sense of relief mixed with anticipation. Help was on the way, and the creature would soon be in capable hands. For now, all he could do was remain patient, continue observing, and ensure that it remained calm. The connection between them deepened as they spent the quiet night together, a silent understanding forming through gestures, glances, and careful movements. Daniel reflected on the unusual chain of events. A quiet evening had transformed into an extraordinary encounter. He had gone to bed like any other night, expecting nothing beyond the usual routine, and yet he was now sharing his apartment with a being unlike any he had ever seen. The fear and tension had evolved into curiosity, admiration, and even a sense of wonder. He realized that life could be unpredictable in the most astonishing ways, and that sometimes the extraordinary could appear when least expected. As he waited for help to arrive, Daniel remained alert but calm. He spoke softly, moved carefully, and observed every subtle shift in the creature's behavior. Each movement, each glance, each tiny sound held meaning. He had learned to trust its instincts while guiding it gently, creating a bond that would remain with him long after the night ended. He marveled at how quickly his ordinary evening had turned into a lesson in patience, care, and understanding. Finally, Daniel heard the faint sound of a vehicle outside, signaling the arrival of the rescue team. His heart raced with a mixture of relief and excitement. He had successfully contained the situation, protected the creature, and was about to witness the next step in this extraordinary experience. He knew that this night would remain in his memory forever, a story of unexpected encounters, careful decisions, and the remarkable surprises that life can deliver when least expected.